Hi, everyone. Wow, we are finally live again. Good evening. Thank you so much for your patience. We took time, but we are finally here right now today. And this evening, I believe in our previous session, you had an amazing time watching, learning about ghostwriting and building portfolio from Mrs. Anu Clement, one of the finest ghostwriter of our time. And in this second session, we'll be learning about the basics of poetry, like how to write poems, the basics of poems, how to write poems, how to really come about it, the styling and all that. You're learning from someone who have nearly 2 decades experience. Jaachi has been writing poem for the longest I've known him, and I can remember that we still get connected because of his works in the poetry works he did for the boy child at the time. So it's quite a privilege and an honor. Like this is the very first time I'll be getting him on the screen. He's come to the private trainings and all that. But for the very first time we'll be having Jaachi on board teachers. Like I count it a very huge privilege. Like it's such an honor to have him here in our midst. So as others will join us shortly. So Jaachị is a web designer. He is the founder of Poemify. I hope I got that correctly because I've played around that particular brand for the longest time. I've known him. It has been so bad that I barely know the proper pronunciation. He is an excellent web designer, an award-winning poet who has written a lot of collections of poems, and the ones have been able to read, they are quite knowledgeable and vast. Of course, Jaachi is not only niched in poetry, he also edits poems, he also edits books, and he is also a publisher. So tonight we'll be having Jaachị Anyatọnwụ in our midst. So if you can hear me and you're with us tonight and you're ready to receive him, can you leave a comment as when we bring Jaachi on? Yes. All right. Beautiful. If you've joined us and you're here, can you leave a comment down below so we know that you can hear me and you can see me? All right. Bremi, can you bring in Jaachi on board? He's already in the studio. All right. If you're just joining, please invite your friends, send a message to someone you know, send a message to your friends. Let them know that Jaachi is with us here tonight, and we're about to learn from our ancestors. I call him ancestors not because he's old, but because of how vast he is in knowledge. Like I call Jaachi ancestors, and I'm not sorry to say that he's very, very knowledgeable. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, Jaachi. It's such an honor to have you here tonight. And I look forward to an amazing learning process amongst us here tonight. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much. So the floor is yours. You can just give us some introduction. They will soon be joining us. We just ended the live session from the other speaker. Yes.
All right. Thanks for the heartwarming introduction and the mind-blowing compliments. Okay, yeah, it's an honor to be here today. Although I'll have to say that I'm really camera shy. I don't know if you're comfortable displaying my face right here. But what option do I have? Okay, You said all there is to say about me. I am, funnily today someone asked me a question. Every Saturday I do go to a tech hub that we started running recently, where I train youngsters on graphic design with their phone. So one of them just approached me after today's lessons and asked, "Sir, are you also a writer?" I looked up and asked her why. She said she's been seeing my Facebook posts and all that. I had to affirm that yes, I am first a poet before every other thing else. So poetry is one thing that I think I'll be right to call it is like breathing to me. Yeah, just like I breathe in and breathe out. That is how dear poetry is to me. It's more like my core. Yeah, it's my core. And today I want to be talking on the depth of poetry for beginners. It is no news that so many people consider poetry to be one form of writing that is reserved for a few persons who have a certain creative ingenuity, that these are the set people who can write poetry. This is because over the years, long before poetry became mainstream, it was difficult to understand a piece of poem, especially when you read a poem from persons like Robert Frost, poem from poets like, let me just dwell on Robert Frost. Poems like the road not taken, and the rest of them. So most people find it difficult to assimilate. Yes, I also experienced that while in secondary school studying literature in English. I never appreciated poetry then, okay, because the kind of poems we are being taught, we are foreign, difficult to understand, difficult to assimilate, and so I believe that is why some people thought or still think that poetry is for a select few, difficult to understand and all that. But then poetry is fun. Poetry can be written by anybody. There are born poets, there are made poets, there are poets who got to do poetry by learning poetry. There are poets who write poetry today because they just had that inborn talent in them. So anybody can write poetry. I wanted to start with that. And that said, poetry is a multi-faceted form of writing, and it often points to a reality beyond itself. There's so much in poetry that's that is more than poetry. I don't know how to explain this, but as I proceed, I believe I will make sense to you. Poetry offers a deep and enriching experience to both the creator and the reader. By this I mean poetry it's not just written like that, just the way an article writer or a blog writer could pick up their pen and write an article on topics that they are in no way connected to or with, whichever fits. Say for instance, an article writer is given a topic to write on, or write on the benefits of AI to a content writer. Any writer can write that without having any emotional attachment to that particular topic. But when it comes to poetry, it affects both the creator, the poet, and the reader equally. There is always this connection between the creator and the reader for poetry. So as an aspiring poet and who is interested in exploring poetry in all forms of it, and the depth of it also, you are going to encounter so many types of poetry. You're going to encounter the issue of evoking emotion. You're going to encounter issue of painting vivid imagery. You're going to encounter the issue of conveying deep symbolism, metaphors, personification, rhythm, rhyme, and all that in your journey as a poet. So I'm just going to take a few moments. I won't like to prolong this. I want to talk about three things about poetry and emotional depth. I might make it 6. Let me check my time. I might make it 6, ought to be 6. Okay, let's make it 6. Number 1 is connection to emotions, or maybe I'll just list 5. Connection to emotions. Poetry is often born from deep emotional experiences. It is rare to read a poem that has no emotional connection. Very, very, very rare. Poetry evokes emotional experiences, allowing the poets to express their emotions, allowing the poets to process an emotion, allowing the poets to share their feelings through words and metaphors. Secondly, okay, before I jump to the second one, I want to paint a mental picture about poetry and connection to emotions. There are most people know me as a writer. Okay, let me not talk about most people. Let me narrow it down to family. My family knows me as a writer and a poet. 3 weeks ago, I made a post on Facebook, and my parents, both of them follow me on Facebook, so they saw the post, and my mom was perturbed. She took it personal. She thought that this it could be that something is wrong with her son. And so she was worried. I don't know how long, when she saw the post, either in the morning or afternoon, but it was later in the evening that we spoke on phone. So when she called on phone and she was asking me, how do you do? What's going on? Is there any problem? And I didn't understand where the question was coming from. So I had to ask her, what's up? Why the show of concern? I don't understand why you're asking all this question. I then heard my dad's voice in the background reminding her that, have you forgotten? I'm using his words in verbatim. Have you forgotten that your son is a poet and a writer? And my mom said, even though, let me add regardless upon still, even though that she just wants to be sure that what I wrote on Facebook is not a personal experience. And that's the thing with poetry. It evokes emotions. It evokes emotions. And she was able to read beyond the lines and see something that every other person might have missed. So that's the thing with poetry. Poetry, especially poetry that has depth, evokes emotion. There is always the connection to emotion. And secondly, it evokes empathy. Poetry invokes empathy. A well-written poem has the power to evoke empathy. It enables the reader to connect with the emotions and experiences of others. I'm going to paint a lot of illustrations while this lasts. Some years back, I think 2018, we used to have a gathering of poets here in Aba, call it Aba Poetry Club. So on one of the Saturdays when we met, one of us recited a poem he wrote. And while reciting the poem, I was drawn to tears. Right there, it was in the afternoon, we were seated in a round setting. So while reading this poem, I was drawn to tears. I got teary and actually wept. It wasn't just me. Every other guy present there, every male present there, was drawn to tears. And including him, the poet who was reading his own poem was crying. When he was done reading his poem, there was silence for some minutes. because when we are soaking in the words of his poem, it evoked empathy. We felt what he felt that made him write that poem. We felt his experience. It was so vivid that we could imagine it, we could see it, we could picture it in our mind, what he experienced and all. So that is the thing with poetry that has depth. It evokes empathy. We felt for him, we identified with his struggles. And that's where we are able to seek solution. It eventually happened to be a personal experience, and it was a cry for help. And we had to provide solutions to that problem. So that is the beautiful thing about poetry. It evokes empathy beyond connecting emotions. And number 3, it has an enriching language. This is one aspect of poetry that I so love. Poetry has enriching language. It reaches language by, it provides a means to articulate complex emotions and experiences with simple words. Poetry helps you convey complex emotions and experiences with simple words. You either use metaphors or you are using hyperbole. You're using personalization, or you're using or readings or rhymes. However the poetry is painted, poetry conveys, helps, has an enriching language. Rather, poetry has an enriching language. It helps you to articulate complex emotions and experiences with simple words. Number 4, should I take the 4th one? Personal reflection. Yes, personal reflection. Through poetry, as a beginner, you can explore your emotions in a safe and creative space. I've met poets who told me why they started writing poetry. One of them said he embraced poetry because he couldn't voice out his emotions. He found it difficult expressing himself to people through speech. So it was easier for him to write down his emotion as a piece of poetry than speak. So that's one beautiful aspect of poetry. It helps with personal reflection, that you can express yourself. It is more like a safe place. So to him, to this friend of mine, his diary is his safe place. Is his safe place where he pours out his emotions, his frustration, his happiness, his joy, his sadness. All sorts of emotions are poured into his diary. That's the thing with poetry. It encourages self-discovery and introspection. I used to have a friend who was going down the path of depression. All right, but she couldn't share with anyone. She couldn't share her burden with anyone. So what I did was to introduce her to poetry. I said, all right, you are feeling this way, you are hurt, you are depressed, you feel down, all sorts of negative emotions, you are embracing them. So this is what I want you to do. Get a diary and start pouring out your emotion in poems. This helped her heal. By the time that diary has been filled with poems from cover to cover, from the first page to the last, she felt a lot better. She was relieved. All the negative emotions was uplifted from her shoulder, and she was a better person afterwards. So poetry helps with self-discovery. It helps with venting. It helps with venting, with unloading all pent-up emotions. It also leads to a deeper understanding of one's own feelings. Poetry leads to a deeper understanding of one's own feeling. Okay. That said, let me talk about the elements of poetry. The elements of poetry, number 1 is imagery. Very important. Imagery and sensory appeal. I consider imagery to be the ears, the nose, the eyes, and the hands of poetry. That is to say, Imagery helps you hear the poem, helps you see the poem, helps you feel the poem, and helps you smell the poem, perceive the poem rather. Helps you perceive the poem. That's the thing with imagery. Effective poetry can incorporate vivid imagery that appeals to your five senses. It creates an immersive experience for the reader. You could be reading a poem and you imagine yourself in it. I once read a poem about the first drop of rain after drought. And while reading this poem, I could perceive the smell of water on dust. There is a word for it. I can't remember the word now. Petri what? The smell of water on dust. I could perceive it while reading that poem. I've read a poem about flowers and coffee. While reading the poem, I was able to perceive the aroma of coffee, to perceive the aroma of a flower. That's the thing with imagery and sensory appeal with poetry. It helps you to incorporate all these vivid imagery, be it touch, be it aroma, be it sight, be it hearing. Those can be incorporated in your poetry for depth. And secondly is rhythm and rhyme. Rhythm and rhyme. While this is not essential, I must say, rhythm and rhyme is not really essential because contemporary poetry do not feature rhymes and rhythms anymore. Poets nowadays write more of free verse, prose poetry, and the rest of them. There is little or no feature of rhythm and rhyme. But then it is important to know this. Rhythm and rhyme can add musicality and structure to poems. We all know these popular poems. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. You see the progression. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. That is a poem. That progression, the way it runs, the way it moves, the way you say it, that is rhythm. Now, the last word of each line is a rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Star is the last word. How I wonder what you are. I is the last word. That is rhyme. So this can add musicality and structure to poems, enhancing the overall beauty and impact. Then number 3 is metaphor. Metaphor and symbolism. I love to join these two. I love to marry these two as one. Utilizing metaphor and symbolism can add layers of meaning to poetry. It allows for deeper, what is the word now? Adjectives love to escape my vocabulary when I need them. Okay, it allows for deeper interpretation and emotional resonance. Metaphor and symbolism allows for deeper interpretation and emotional resonance. Okay, what I'm going to say next will be on structural simplicity. Structural simplicity of a poem. The poem needs to have accessible language. Accessible language. This is one thing I advocate for wherever I go and poetry is being discussed. I will always say that if the market woman, a petty trader by the roadside or in a general market cannot understand my poetry, then I've not written a poem. The poem should be easily understood by the scholarly person and the layman and even the illiterate. Everybody understands twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. An illiterate knows what it means. An academic knows what it is. An engineer knows what it means. A poet knows what it is. Everybody, whatever their category or their level of knowledge, knows and understand that particular poem. That's how they ought to be for all type of poetry, be it a haiku, be it a free verse, be it a prose poetry, be it an alliteration or whatever type or form of poem you choose to write. everybody should be able to understand your poem. So using simple and accessible language in poetry can enable a wider audience to engage with the depth of the message. Can enable a wider audience to engage with the depth of the message. I would love to write a poem that an elderly person will read and understand. A young boy will read and understand. And a teenager will read and understand. A pupil in the primary school will read and easily understand. That is poetry with depth. That is poetry with depth. I believe that's poetry with depth. So it ensures that the emotional impact is not lost in complex imagery. If you read poets like poetic works from people like who I'm going to use to illustrate this, like Shakespeare, or let's say a piece of poetry written by Wole Soyinka, you might find it difficult to understand. But when you read a poem written by Niyi Oshundare, it is easy to understand. I wish I had a poem here. I would have loved to read it. A poem by Niyi Oshundare titled where was the title again? Where can I keep my bride? Yeah, my Lord, where can I keep my bride? Very descriptive poem. Very descriptive poem. The language easy to understand. Easy to understand for the layman and for the academic. And another thing there in structural simplicity is the ability to focus on expression. Now, a simple structure can help direct the reader's focus to the underlying emotion and themes. This helps to enhance the depth of the poetic experience. By this I mean, a poem should have a focused expression. You can't start writing about love and somehow you deviate, and the poem is now about war. You started the poem writing about hurt and depression, and somehow the poem ended in romance and sex. You can't start writing the poem about politics, anti-politics, and somehow the poem takes a religious turn. There should be a focused expression in every poem. From the beginning to the end, your reader should be able to understand what this poem is about. What is the theme? If it is love, let it be love from the beginning to the end. If it is hurt, let it be hurt from the beginning to the end. If it is anger, let it be anger from the beginning to the end. Your reader shouldn't feel lost in between the poem, having started with a different theme, guessing between, meet something different, and then at the end it is a different ball game altogether. A poem should have a focused expression. In summary, poem should have a focused expression. And then let me talk about some types of poems. There are several types of poems. I've mentioned some of them earlier. There is free verse, there is sonnet, there is haiku, there is ode, there is epic, there is prose poetry, and the rest of them. I'm going to talk about just a few. Let's say, let me just talk about three. All right, free verse. Free verse poetry disregards traditional poetic structure. A free verse allows for more creative freedom and expression. As the name implies, it is free. You are not restricted to line by line, verse by verse. A free verse can be a paragraph. A free verse can be a paragraph. The only difference between a free verse and a prose written work is that a free verse is the what are they called again? The literary devices used in writing it. There will be an infusion of metaphor, infusion of imagery, infusion of every other literary device in that written work. Then secondly, there is sonnets. Sonnet offers a structural form with a defined rhyming pattern. It offers a structural form with a defined rhyming pattern that allows poets to explore depths with a specific framework. There are 14 lines sonnets. There are 16 lines sonnets. So if you say you're writing a sonnet and you stop at line 10, it is no longer a sonnet. Or maybe you stop at line 5, it is not a sonnet. It must follow the laid down rules and pattern of writing sonnets. Thirdly is a haiku. Haiku originated from Japan. It is a concise and specific kind of poem. It is actually challenging, simple yet challenging. It challenges the poets to convey profound depths with a minimalistic framework. Now, a haiku has only 3 lines, and each line 1 has 5 syllables, line 2 7 syllables, line 3 4 or 5 syllables. All right, so haiku is very easy to write. You might want to write a haiku about sunshine, a haiku about a flower, haiku about a person, haiku about a bird, haiku about a computer. Haiku is very easy to write. In fact, I do suggest poets. All right, I do suggest to intending poets to practice writing haiku first. Practice writing haiku first before you delve into other forms of poetry. Okay, in summary, let me just jump to the end. In summary, I just have to say this. There is no one way to do poetry. There's no one way to do poetry. It's like a big buffet. You get to pick and choose what works for you. Maybe you may be all about metaphors and symbolism. That's pretty cool. You may want to embrace sonnets and haiku. That is okay. Or maybe you prefer straight up descriptions that hit right in the feels. It's all good. So if you're just starting out as a poet in your poetry journey, do not sweat it. Do not sweat it. There is no secret code you have to crack or a fancy technique that you have to master. Just grab a poem, let your thoughts flow, and see where it takes you. See where it takes you. Just be like water. Be ready to fill into every and any container. Who knows? You just might surprise yourself. All right. That's enough rambling from me. I thank you all for tuning in. I thank you, Ella, for the honor. Remember, poetry is like a treasure map. Let me close with that. And you can never know what you will find until you start exploring. Thank you and happy writing.
Awesome. So amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Jaachi. Like, this is rebirth. Finally, I got you to teach me poetry. I'll go and write my poem and you review it. Oh. Thank you so much. That was in depth. Poetry is like, I want to get that statement because really it's important to me. You said poetry is like, okay, since your mic is muted, thank you so much for that impact.
Yes. Poetry is like a treasure map. You may never know what you will find until you start exploring. I think that's what I said.
Wow. You will never know what you will find
until you start exploring.
You will find. Thank you so much. this is in depth. I can say it and over again, and I won't get tired saying it. Thank you so much for taking your time to teach us this much, and for also appearing on the camera. I know it's not your thing. I will drag you here. Thank you for that sacrifice. We don't take it for granted. So to everyone who have joined us, if you enjoyed Jaachi's session, please do well to leave a comment. Let him know that you enjoyed the session, a clapping emoji, a fire emoji. Leave it in the comment section. Let him know that he didn't waste his time. Jaachi is a very big person that you hardly bring him to, you can hardly be able to bring him to your platform. But tonight he's sacrificing his time, his resources, and whatnot, just to teach each and every one of us. It's quite a pleasure and an honor I don't take for granted. Thank you so much, Jaachi, for being here tonight. Thank you so much for teaching us. Thank you for sharing from your wealth of knowledge. It has gone a long way, and I know everyone who will be watching replays and all of that will really be happy they did. So Macbeth is saying thank you so much, and also I am saying thank you so much, and I will see you at the back end as we commence the next session. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great.
An honor. Thank you too.